Imagine this. You are standing at the threshold of your 40s. The mirror reflects a familiar face, one you've carried for decades, but now, there are faint lines tracing your skin, a softness around the eyes, as though life itself has quietly signed its name across your body. And yet, what unsettles you is not the slow passage of time, but the gnawing sense that something is slipping beyond your grasp. You have built a life, maybe a career, a family, a home, but somewhere in the silence between your heartbeats, an uncomfortable question keeps echoing: is this all there is? The world told you that by this age, things would finally make sense. That you'd arrive, settled, confident, sure of yourself. But instead, you feel suspended between who you were and someone unknown waiting to emerge. Like an actor caught between scenes, holding a script that suddenly feels foreign in their hands. You were promised clarity. You were promised fulfillment. Yet, here you are, with a life that perhaps looks complete from the outside, but feels unfinished, like a house with beautiful walls but hollow rooms. There's a strange contradiction that no one warns you about. As the world starts to see you as more complete, you begin to feel more fragmented. You've collected the pieces, titles, relationships, successes, but instead of building a coherent whole, they seem to clash, like a collage that doesn't quite make sense. You wake up some mornings with a sharp, almost desperate longing, not for youth, not for missed opportunities, but for something deeper, a sense of meaning that feels alive, pulsing, undeniable. And here lies the paradox: you've done everything right, so why does it feel so wrong? Think about it. You've followed the script society handed you. The careful blueprint of a good life, education, career, family, security. Yet, beneath the surface, there's a quiet storm, the uneasy realization that you've been living in a story authored by someone else. A story that once fit, but now feels like an ill-fitting coat, stitched together from old dreams that no longer match the person you've become. But if not this story, then what? And who are you if you no longer recognize the narrative you've been living? The deeper you look, the more unsettling the questions become. What if the things you've worked so hard to build were not truly yours? What if they were echoes of your parents' expectations, society's projections, a younger version of yourself who couldn't imagine the emptiness that comes from chasing goals disconnected from the soul? What if, as Jung warned, you've spent the first half of life building a self that now must die for something greater to be born? Carl Jung spoke of a truth that few dare to confront until midlife forces them to their knees. The person you needed to be to survive the first half of life is not the person who will carry you through the second half. Let that sink in. The skills, the masks, the ambitions that served you in your 20s and 30s, the relentless drive, the need to prove yourself, the constant doing, may now be the very things holding you captive. And yet, to let them go feels like standing on the edge of a dark forest, knowing you must enter but fearing you won't find your way out. So here you are, standing on the threshold of your 40s. You hold within you two competing forces, the desperate urge to hold on to what you've built, and the equally powerful longing to tear it all down and start anew. But how do you destroy a life that everyone else sees as successful? How do you explain to those around you, your family, your friends, that despite all appearances, something essential is missing? Or perhaps it's not about tearing down, but about facing a hidden truth, that the journey now is inward, not outward. That the next mountain to climb is not external success, but internal wholeness. But who teaches us how to do that? Who shows us how to navigate the strange terrain of the soul when all we've known is the external chase for achievement, recognition, and security? Jung wrote, thoroughly unprepared, we take the step into the afternoon of life. Worse still, we take this step with the false presupposition that our truths and our ideals will serve us as hitherto. But we cannot live the afternoon of life according to the program of life's morning, for what was great in the morning will be little at evening, and what in the morning was true will at evening have become a lie. So what now? If the truths of our morning life are beginning to crumble, what truths are waiting to be discovered in the afternoon of life? And if we are no longer who we were, but not yet who we are meant to become, who are we now? Imagine standing in that space between the life you've built and the life that is waiting for you, unknown, unshaped, terrifying in its emptiness, but full of possibility. Are you ready to face that emptiness? Are you ready to meet the stranger within, the one who has been silently waiting for you to notice them all these years? And what if, just what if, the thing you are most afraid to face is the doorway to the freedom you've been longing for? we are left with a final, unsettling question, one that will haunt us until we dare to answer it. If you let go of everything that no longer serves you, what remains? Who remains? Hold that question close, because in the next moment, we will begin to uncover the hidden roots of this deep unrest. And the reason why, as you approach your 40s, the self you've known is starting to unravel. There's a truth that hides beneath the surface of your discomfort, an ancient truth buried under layers of modern life. You were never taught to think about life in halves. No one told you that around midlife, the very identity you constructed would begin to collapse under its own weight. No one told you that what you think is wrong with you, this vague discontent, this invisible crisis, is not failure, but a calling. A call from the unconscious, from the deepest part of you, to begin a different kind of journey, the journey inward. Carl Jung called this the individuation process, the moment when the self, that deeper wholeness beyond the ego, starts to stir. Until now, you've lived in the kingdom of the ego, building, striving, conquering. But now, without warning, something ancient and vast begins to awaken. And this awakening is terrifying because it threatens everything you've built to protect yourself from life's uncertainties. Think of it like this: the first half of life is about becoming someone, constructing a persona that can survive in the world. It's about achieving, competing, belonging. But the second half, if we dare to face it, is about becoming whole. And that requires facing everything you rejected or buried in the name of survival. It requires turning toward the parts of yourself you've denied, the fears, the desires, the shadow. But why does this divide exist at all? Why does the psyche follow this strange and painful rhythm? To understand this, we must go deeper, to the roots of the human condition itself. From a young age, you are taught to believe in linear growth, the myth that life is a straight line of progress. Each year, you are supposed to get better, wiser, richer, more successful. But Jung and Nietzsche would argue that life is cyclical, spiral-shaped, not linear. Like the seasons, we are meant to die and be reborn many times over. But modern society rejects this wisdom. It teaches us to fear decline, fear aging, fear change, as though standing still could save us from time. And so, when the call for inner transformation comes, we resist it. We try to patch over the cracks with distractions, new goals, new relationships, new possessions. Anything to avoid looking into the abyss that has opened inside us. But the abyss is not an enemy. It is an invitation, a threshold we are meant to cross. Nietzsche described this moment as the birth of the higher man, the person who dares to step beyond societal norms and face life as it truly is, uncertain, chaotic, beautiful, and tragic. But such courage is rare. Most people, Nietzsche believed, cannot bear this freedom. They cling to illusions, to comforting stories about who they are, even when those stories are killing them inside. And here is the hidden problem of midlife: you are outgrowing the story you've been living. Your psyche knows it. Your dreams, your anxieties, your sudden bursts of anger or sadness, they are all messages from the unconscious, telling you that the mask you've worn is cracking. But because society tells you to ignore these signs, you suppress them, and in doing so, you cut yourself off from the very part of you that could save you. Jung believed that modern humans suffer from a loss of soul, a disconnection from the deeper, archetypal forces that give life meaning. We are so busy living out roles, worker, parent, spouse, that we forget to ask who we are beneath those roles. And the longer we ignore this question, the more intense the inner pressure becomes. Until one day, you wake up, and nothing makes sense anymore. The career you built feels empty. The relationships feel distant. The goals that once fired you up now leave you cold. Arthur Schopenhauer, that dark philosopher of the will, wrote that human life is driven by endless striving, a will that never finds satisfaction. And if you reflect honestly, you will see the truth of this. You have spent your life chasing things, believing that once you had them, peace would follow. But peace never came. The moment you reached one goal, another arose. The ladder of life never ended, until now, when you realize you no longer have the strength or desire to keep climbing. Aldous Huxley warned that modern life anesthetizes us, dulling our deeper questions with noise, entertainment, and constant busyness. And perhaps that is why facing your 40s feels so raw. For the first time, the noise isn't enough. The distractions fail to silence the deeper questions. Something in you knows that time is running out. If you don't face this now, when will you? If you don't ask why you are here, what life truly means, when will you? And as this realization sets in, another layer of fear arises. What if you no longer know who you are without the roles you've played? What if, beneath the mask of success and certainty, there is only emptiness? But Jung would say, this is not emptiness, it is space for something new to be born. What feels like falling apart is actually a deeper integration trying to happen, if only you would allow it. And this leads us to the most painful but necessary truth: you cannot enter the second half of life unless you are willing to let the first half die. Like a snake shedding its skin, like a phoenix burning itself to ash, you must let go of the identity that no longer serves you. But no one tells you how. No one teaches you the inner work required to navigate this crossing. Jean-Paul Sartre, in his brutal honesty, reminds us that we are condemned to be free, whether we want to be or not. And in midlife, this freedom becomes terrifying. Because now, you must decide who you are. No more scripts. No more following the crowd. Just you, standing in front of the mirror, asking, who do I choose to become, now that I know the world's promises are empty? And so, as you stand here, caught between the life you built and the life calling to you, the real question begins to burn. Are you brave enough to let go of the person you've been to become the person you are meant to be? But before you can answer that, you must understand what's really at stake. Because this hidden problem, this quiet war inside you, has consequences that reach further than you think. In the next section, we will look at the unseen consequences of avoiding this call, the way it shapes your choices, your relationships, and even your health, without you realizing it. The cost of pretending that nothing needs to change. You may think you can ignore this quiet revolution stirring inside you. You may tell yourself that life is fine, that nothing is broken, that these thoughts are just a phase. But what if the price of that denial is far greater than you imagine? What if the parts of yourself you refuse to face are not going away, but growing stronger in the shadows? Imagine waking up each day and feeling an invisible weight pressing on your chest. You go through the motions, coffee, commute, meetings, dinner, but everything feels muted, as if life itself has lost its color. You smile, but inside you are crumbling. And yet, you keep moving forward because admitting the truth would mean unraveling everything you've built. So you suppress the questions. You silence the voice inside you that says, something isn't right. But here's the danger: the parts of yourself you suppress don't disappear, they revolt. Jung called this the shadow, everything you reject, deny, or refuse to see about yourself. And as you push away the uncomfortable truths, your forgotten dreams, your deeper desires, your anger, your grief, they sink into the unconscious, waiting for their moment. You might think you're in control. But in reality, the parts of you you've buried are already shaping your life in ways you don't even realize. Consider this: the longer you resist this inner transformation, the more you will find yourself trapped in patterns of quiet self-destruction. You may stay in a job that drains you because it's safe. You may stay in relationships that suffocate you because they are comfortable. You may chase more money, more success, more recognition, trying to fill a void that can't be filled with external things. And when none of that works, you may numb yourself through distractions, addictions, or endless busyness, because sitting still means facing the terrifying question, who am I really? But the consequences of avoiding this inner reckoning are not just emotional or spiritual, they are physical. The body keeps the score. Anxiety, depression, chronic fatigue, tension, these are the body's ways of expressing the war raging inside. Your psyche is screaming for your attention, and if you won't listen with your mind, it will force you to listen through your body. Think about how many people enter their 40s and 50s only to face mysterious illnesses, breakdowns, or crises they cannot explain. Heart problems, panic attacks, insomnia. Why? Because you cannot live divided against yourself forever. You cannot keep silencing your soul without a cost. Neurologically, the brain itself begins to respond to this hidden conflict. When you live inauthentically, when your outer life no longer matches your inner truth, the brain's stress centers remain activated. Cortisol levels rise. The nervous system stays on high alert. You may not realize it, but your body is in a constant state of battle, fighting a war against your own denial. And over time, that war wears you down. But it doesn't stop there. The unseen consequences seep into your relationships. You begin to project your inner frustration onto others, your spouse, your children, your friends. The irritability, the resentment, the cold distance, they are often symptoms of an inner fracture, not caused by others, but by your own unacknowledged turmoil. You may feel trapped in cycles of blame, thinking if only they would change, I could be happy, when in fact, it is you who must face the mirror. Consider Viktor Frankl's warning: when a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure. And isn't that what so much of modern life has become? Endless scrolling, binge watching, shopping for things you don't need, numbing out because facing the void is too terrifying. But the truth is, the void is only terrifying when you don't know what it is. Once you understand it, once you face it, it becomes a portal, not a prison. The tragedy is that most people will never cross that portal. They will choose distraction over depth, comfort over courage. They will spend their lives polishing the mask rather than uncovering the face beneath. But here's the haunting truth: what you refuse to face in yourself will find ways to destroy what you love most. If you do not confront your shadow, it will leak out into the world through anger, bitterness, depression, failed relationships, lost opportunities. And culturally, we are taught to fear this process. Society worships youth, productivity, surface happiness. There is no space for questioning, for unraveling, for deep inner work. You are expected to keep performing, even as you fall apart. And so, people suffer silently, wearing masks so well that not even their closest friends suspect the emptiness within. But it doesn't have to be this way. Jung said, we cannot change anything unless we accept it. And this is where the real work begins. Not in running from the emptiness, but in turning toward it. Not in silencing the questions, but in asking them more deeply. Not in denying the fear, but in walking straight into it. Because on the other side of that fear is something extraordinary, your real self, undiluted, unmasked, whole. Imagine what it would be like to wake up and no longer feel divided. To stop pretending. To live a life that feels real, even if it doesn't look perfect from the outside. Imagine being able to say, without apology, this is who I am. This is what I want. This is what I will no longer accept. But before you can reach that place, you must see the full cost of not changing. You must understand that avoiding this inner work is not neutral, it's devastating. The more you avoid your true self, the more life will feel like a prison. The more you pretend, the more your soul will rebel, through depression, rage, emptiness. So now, the question is no longer whether you will face this crisis. The question is when. Will you wait until everything falls apart? Until your body forces you to stop? Or will you have the courage to begin now, before the storm overtakes you? Because here is the hard truth, there is no avoiding this reckoning. There is only delaying it, and paying the price for that delay. In the next section, we will begin to uncover the way out, the path through this darkness. Not the false solution society offers, but a real, radical rebellion against the lies that have kept you trapped. A way to break free. Now imagine this: what if everything you were taught about success, happiness, and identity was a lie? What if the life you are struggling to hold together is not yours, but a carefully crafted illusion handed to you by others, by society, by your parents, by your younger self, who did not know any better? What if breaking down is not a failure, but the first step toward freedom? This is the moment where rebellion begins. Not a rebellion against others, but a rebellion against the false life you've built around yourself. The rebellion of becoming who you truly are, even if it means tearing apart everything that no longer fits. And to do this, you must be ready to challenge every story you've told yourself about who you are, what you want, and what is possible. Jung called this the confrontation with the self, a moment when the persona, the mask you wear, begins to dissolve, and what lies beneath starts to emerge. But here is the first radical truth: you are not your persona. You are not your job title. You are not your social roles. You are not the identity you have been performing to win approval, love, or recognition. Beneath all of that is a deeper self, wild, untamed, real. And now is the time to meet that self. But how? How do you break free when everything you've built seems to depend on keeping up the illusion? It starts with radical honesty, a courage to sit in the quiet and finally ask yourself, what do I want? What am I pretending not to know? What am I afraid to admit? This is where the rebellion begins, not by running away, but by turning inward and facing everything you've avoided. The grief for a life that no longer serves you. The anger for all the times you said yes when you wanted to say no. The fear of starting over. The shame of wanting something different than what you should want. Because here is the secret, the only way out is through. But society has trained you to avoid this inner confrontation. You were taught to chase after external solutions, buy something new, start a new project, seek validation from others, anything to avoid facing your own soul. Yet these are false rebellions, distractions that only tighten the chains. The real rebellion is deeper, quieter, and infinitely more powerful. Start by rejecting the myth of endless productivity. You are not a machine. You do not exist to produce, to achieve, to meet others' expectations. You exist to live, to feel, to become whole. And sometimes, becoming whole means stopping, refusing to keep moving in a direction that is killing your spirit. What if you gave yourself permission to pause? To ask, if I stop performing, who would I be? Rebellion is also saying no, the most powerful word you can speak. No to the roles that suffocate you. No to relationships that drain you. No to dreams that no longer fit the person you are becoming. Every no to what is false is a yes to what is real. But to do this, you must face the fear of disappointing others. Because becoming yourself means breaking out of the expectations others have placed on you. Jung reminds us, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But that privilege comes at a cost, the cost of no longer living for others' approval. And here's the second radical truth, freedom begins when you are willing to lose everything that is false. Imagine stripping away every identity, every title, every mask, until only the essential remains. What would be left? Perhaps nothing you can describe in words, but something real, something alive. Think of Nietzsche's Übermensch not as a superior man, but as one who dares to create new values for himself. One who dares to live beyond the herd, beyond conformity. The Übermensch is not handed meaning, he creates it. And that is the rebellion you are called to create your own meaning, rather than borrowing it from others. But where do you begin? How do you take the first step? Start small. Begin by listening to yourself again. Not to the voices of society, but to the small, quiet voice within, the voice that whispers what you really want. When was the last time you asked yourself what you want, not what you should want, not what others expect, but what stirs your soul? Sit with that question, even if the answer scares you. Then begin to act on those truths, even in small ways. Say no to the meeting that drains you. Say yes to the book that calls to you. Take a walk instead of answering one more email. Call the person who makes you feel alive, not the one who makes you feel small. These small acts of rebellion reclaim your life inch by inch. But beyond these steps lies an even greater rebellion, reclaiming the parts of yourself you've buried. Jung called this integrating the shadow, bringing back the pieces of yourself you had to abandon to survive. The anger you were told was wrong. The wildness you were told was too much. The dreams you were told were unrealistic. What if these are the very keys to your freedom? Reclaim your shadow, and you reclaim your power. Because everything you've buried still lives inside you, waiting to be invited back. And as you gather these lost parts, you begin to feel whole again. You begin to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Finally, rebellion means facing the unknown, being willing to live without a script, without guarantees. This is the hardest part. Because the ego craves certainty, craves control. But the self, the deeper you, lives in mystery. Lives in the open sky, not behind walls. Freedom is terrifying because it means no one will tell you who to be. But it is also exhilarating because you get to decide. You get to write a new story, not the story society gave you, but the story that is true to your soul. So now, standing here, with everything cracking open, the question becomes urgent. Will you take the leap? Will you dare to break free, even if it costs you everything that is false? Will you choose to be real over being safe? Because make no mistake, this is a point of no return. Once you see the truth, you cannot unsee it. Once you feel the call of your deeper self, you cannot silence it forever. And if you are brave enough to answer that call, to step beyond the walls you've built, something extraordinary awaits. But what is that something? What lies on the other side of this rebellion? In the final section, we will confront the ultimate truth, the revelation that makes sense of everything you've faced so far. A truth that is both terrifying and liberating. A truth that will change the way you see life itself. Imagine standing alone on a vast plain at dawn. The sky is endless, the world around you silent, waiting. For the first time in decades, there are no voices telling you who to be. No labels. No expectations. No mirrors reflecting what others want from you. Just you and the raw, unfiltered question, who am I, when everything I thought I was is stripped away? And maybe this is the terrifying, magnificent truth that was waiting for you all along. There is no final version of you. There never was. All your life, you've been taught to find yourself as though you were some fixed thing buried under the surface, waiting to be uncovered. But now, staring into the emptiness left behind after the rebellion, you begin to see that you are not something to be found, you are something to be created. And this realization is both a death and a birth. The death of certainty. The birth of infinite possibility. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But here is the part they never tell you: who you truly are is not a fixed identity, but a process, a becoming, an unfolding mystery. You are not a statue to be carved, but a river, constantly moving, shaping, changing. And maybe that is why midlife feels like such a violent breaking, because for the first time, you are being asked to live without a script. To step beyond the roles, beyond the masks, and into the vast unknown. To finally live as a creature of freedom, rather than a prisoner of expectation. But freedom is terrifying. Because it means no one is coming to tell you what to do next. It means there are no more shoulds. No more clear paths. Only you, facing the vastness of your own life, and realizing you are the author now. And here is the final, most powerful realization: your life is not a problem to be solved, it is a mystery to be lived. All those years you spent trying to figure it out, trying to fix yourself, trying to become good enough, what if none of that was necessary? What if you were never broken, but simply unfinished? What if all the pain, the questioning, the unraveling was part of a larger becoming, one that could only happen if you were willing to be undone? Friedrich Nietzsche said, "You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star." Maybe this chaos you feel, the confusion, the emptiness, is not a sign of failure, but the very place where something new is being born. Not the person you thought you were supposed to be, but the person you could be if only you let yourself break open. And in that breaking, in that surrender, you discover the self, not as a fixed identity, but as the vastness of life itself moving through you. You are no longer just a collection of memories, roles, and fears. You are something deeper. Something timeless. A living mystery. Imagine what it would feel like to finally stop running from yourself. To stop trying to fix what was never broken. To stand fully in your own skin, no longer pretending, no longer hiding. To say, "This is me, unfinished, imperfect, but real." And what if that was enough? What if, after all these years of chasing, striving, proving, you didn't need to become anyone else? What if you are already enough, simply because you exist? This is where the deepest freedom lies, the freedom to be as you are. Not as you should be. Not as others expect you to be. But as you, raw, flawed, beautiful in ways you cannot even see. And once you taste that freedom, you begin to live differently. You no longer chase things to fill the void, because you realize you are the fullness you were always seeking. You no longer need to wear masks to be loved, because you finally love yourself. You no longer need to run from the darkness, because you've learned to walk through it, and in doing so, you found your own light. But this freedom comes with a cost, the cost of everything false. The cost of safety. The cost of certainty. You must be willing to lose the life that was never truly yours. And perhaps that is the ultimate truth waiting at the heart of midlife. You are being asked to die so you can live. To let the old self die, the self that was built to survive, to win approval, to play a role. and in its place, to let something deeper rise, something real, wild, alive. Arthur Schopenhauer, despite his dark view of human suffering, said something profound: the greatest wisdom is to realize that we are not the center of the universe, and yet, that we are part of something vast and mysterious. And maybe that is what midlife is trying to teach you. That all your striving, all your ego-driven goals, were never the point. The point was always to awaken to this deeper truth: you are part of the great mystery of life, and your task is to live it fully, fearlessly, without apology. And so now, as the dust of your rebellion settles, as you stand amid the ruins of the life you've outgrown, you are faced with a final question, one that no one else can answer for you. What will you create, now that you know you are free? Will you create a life that is real, even if it scares you? Will you choose truth over comfort? Will you dare to follow the quiet voice within, even if it leads you away from everything familiar? Because here is the gift of midlife, the gift hidden inside all the pain and confusion, the chance to finally live as yourself. Not as the person others wanted. Not as the person you thought you had to be. But as the person you are when all the masks fall away. And maybe that is what life was always trying to teach you. That you are more than your job. More than your roles. More than your past. You are a living question, an unfolding mystery that will never be finished, but always becoming. So as you step forward into this next chapter, remember this: you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to know what's next. You only have to be willing to walk toward what is real, to follow what feels true. And in doing that, in daring to be real, to be whole, to be free, you will discover what you were searching for all along: yourself. So now I ask you, are you ready? Ready to stop living for others? Ready to stop hiding? Ready to create a life that is yours? Because if you are, then everything changes. Not because the world will change, but because you will. And that is the secret no one tells you about your 40s. This is not the end, it is the beginning. Not the end of your youth, but the birth of your truth. So, step forward. Burn the old scripts. Write your own. And let the real you finally live.